Let me ask you something. When you hear the words Islam and Christianity, what comes to your mind? Maybe conflict, division, or even fear. But let's change that. Today we're going to cut through all the noise. Let's talk about what Islam really says about Christians. Because once you know the truth, the real, historical and written truth, you won't be able to ignore it. And it might change the way you see the world. And let me show you something most people don't know. In Islam, Christians are not seen as outsiders or enemies. They're not rejected or dehumanized. Actually, they're given a name filled with respect, al-Kitab, or people of the book. Now, let me explain what that means. It's not just a religious term, it's a key idea in the Qur'an. People of the book refers to those who received earlier messages from God before the Prophet Muhammad, mainly Jews and Christians. It means God sees these groups as part of his divine story. They were given holy books. They were chosen to deliver guidance to the world. That alone should make us pause. Because Islam doesn't see itself as something completely separate. It sees itself as part of a bigger story, a shared history of faith. And this isn't just a nice idea. It shows up in how Muslims are taught to speak to Christians. The Qur'an in chapter 29 verse 46 says, "Do not argue with the people of the book except in the best and kindest way unless they act unfairly and say, 'We believe in what was revealed to us and what was revealed to you.' Our God and your God is one, and we submit to him." Think about that for a moment. This verse doesn't say to fight people with different beliefs. It doesn't say to mock them or push them away. It says to speak kindly and with grace. And even when you don't agree, do it with respect. Now, some might ask, that's just one verse. Does it really happen like that in real life? Yes, it does. And it did happen in history. Let's go back to the time of the Prophet Muhammad. There's a moment that shows this perfectly. A Christian group from a place called Najran, now part of Saudi Arabia, visited the Prophet in Medina. They talked, debated, and discussed religion, and when it was time for them to pray, do you know what the Prophet did? He let them pray inside his mosque. Think about that. He didn't stop them. He didn't ask them to leave. He welcomed them and shared his holy space with them. That one act, allowing them to pray in the most sacred place in the city, says more about Islam's respect for other faiths than any book could. And it didn't end there. The Prophet gave them something called the Charter of Najran. This document protected the rights of Christians. It said their churches would not be destroyed, their crosses would stay in place, and their religious leaders would not be harmed. It even said that if a church needed repairs, Muslims should help fix it. That's not just tolerance. That's active care and support. That's being allies. When you look at the real teachings of Islam, not just the headlines or rumors, you find something powerful. Christianity is not treated like an enemy. It's seen like family. Not the same, but connected. Different roads, but heading in the same direction. So when people say that Islam is against Christians, they're not just wrong, they're missing the truth. The Quran doesn't call Christians unbelievers, it calls them people of the book. It tells Muslims to treat them kindly, especially in conversations. And it reminds everyone that God is one. That's the real foundation. That's the real truth. And if more people understood it, the world would be having a very different conversation today. Let's look at something else that's often misunderstood. Something that could totally change how you think about Islam and Christianity. Here it is. Muslims and Christians believe in the same God. Yes, you heard that right. Not a similar God, not a local version. The same God, the God of Abraham, the Creator. The one who sent holy books to prophets throughout time. Now, does that mean Islam and Christianity are the same? No, of course not. There are big differences in beliefs. No one is denying that. But at the heart of both religions is the belief in one true God who created everything. Let's break this down. When a Muslim says Allah, many people think it means some strange or different God. Like Allah is only for Muslims, but that's not true. Allah is just the Arabic word for God. Here's something most people don't know. Arabic-speaking Christians also use the word Allah to talk about God. If you go into a church in Lebanon or Egypt, you'll hear Christians saying prayers using the name Allah, just like in a mosque. Why? Because the word Allah was used by Arab Christians and Jews even before Islam. It's not owned by any religion. It's the name used for the one true creator. Now, go to the Quran. In chapter 3, verse 64, it says, "Say, O people of the book, come to a common word between us and you, that we will worship none but God. That's a direct call to focus on what brings us together, not what separates us. What's that common word? That there is only one God, and only He should be worshipped. In another verse, chapter 29, verse 46, it says, "Our God and your God is one, and to Him we submit." That's a powerful line. It doesn't cancel Christians out. It says, yes, we may have disagreements about things like Jesus or salvation, but don't forget we both believe in the same foundation, one God above all. It gets even more interesting. Both Islam and Christianity believe in the same key prophets: Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and yes, Jesus. They may have different roles, but the line of prophets is shared. It's like a spiritual family tree. And who are they all pointing to? The one Creator. This doesn't mean we ignore our differences. It means we're honest about what we share, and believing in the same God is a big deal. It means we're not total strangers spiritually. We're neighbors. We're like cousins. We're standing on different levels of the same building, looking at the same sky. Yes, Muslims don't believe in the Trinity. They don't believe Jesus is the Son of God. That's real, and we're not hiding it. But even with those differences, Islam doesn't call Christianity a religion with many gods. It keeps reminding Muslims that Christians are part of a bigger story, one that's still centered on belief in a single creator. And let me be clear, this kind of understanding doesn't mean you have to convert or change your beliefs. That's not the goal. The goal is to see the bridge that already exists, and it's been there the whole time, built on belief in the same God. Once you understand that, it changes how you talk to others. It changes how you listen. And it definitely changes how you judge. Because in the end, it's not about proving who's right. It's about realizing we've been closer than we thought. There's one thing that really surprises people when they learn about Islam. Muslims believe in Jesus. Not just a little, not as a symbol. They really believe in him. He's not forgotten or ignored. He's actually one of the most honored people in the whole religion. Let me explain. In Islam, Jesus, or Isa in Arabic, is one of the greatest prophets ever sent by God. Not just another name. He's in the top ranks alongside Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Muhammad. In fact, Jesus is mentioned more times in the Qur'an by name than the Prophet Muhammad. That's how important he is. Here's something else that might shock you. Muslims believe Jesus was born to the Virgin Mary, Maryam in Arabic. They believe she was chosen, pure, and honored above all women. There's even an entire chapter in the Qur'an named after her, Surah Maryam. Not just to mention a whole chapter. No other woman, not even the Prophet Muhammad's own family, gets that kind of spotlight in the Qur'an. The story of Jesus' birth in Islam is a miracle. No human father, just Mary, chosen by God. That sounds familiar because that part of the story is shared with Christianity. Muslims believe in it fully. And it goes further. Muslims believe Jesus performed real miracles. He healed the blind, cured people with skin diseases, gave life to clay birds, and even raised the dead with God's permission. That part is important. In Islam, Jesus didn't do these things because he was God. He did them because God gave him the power. He was a chosen messenger, not divine. That's the main difference. Muslims don't believe Jesus is God or the Son of God. They believe he was a human being with a holy mission, just like Moses, just like Muhammad. In Islam, God is not divided. God is one always. So saying Jesus is divine, that's where Islam draws the line. But rejecting Jesus, not at all. In fact, Muslims believe something else that shocks many people. They believe Jesus didn't die on the cross. They believe God raised him up and saved him. And they believe Jesus will return one day. That's right, Muslims are waiting for Jesus too. Not with a new message, but to bring justice and peace to the world. That's part of Islamic belief. So, take a step back. What do we have? A religion that believes in Jesus' miracle birth, his message, his wonders, and even his second coming. That's not someone being ignored. That's someone being deeply respected. What does that mean for all of us? It means the huge wall that people think stands between Muslims and Christians is not as big as we were told. Because Jesus is already on both sides of it. We may see him differently, but we both honor him. That shared respect is powerful. And if more people really looked into what Islam teaches, we'd see more honesty, less fear, and a lot more mutual respect. Jesus isn't just a line that divides. He's a bridge that connects. Now let's be honest about something. There's a big myth out there that Islam forces people to believe or convert, that it's a religion based on pressure or control, that if you're not Muslim, you're an enemy. That's the story many people have been told, but the truth is very different. One of the strongest and clearest verses in the Qur'an says this: there is no compulsion in religion. That's Qur'an 2:256. Let's say that again because it's not just a nice quote. It's a rule. There is no forcing anyone when it comes to religion. True belief can't come from fear, pressure, or being pushed. In Islam, faith must come from within. It has to be your own decision, not something someone else controls. That idea alone breaks many of the common misunderstandings. Islam makes it very clear that God gave humans free will. That wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. Everyone is responsible for their own choices. You can't push belief into someone. You can't argue them into faith. Even the Prophet Muhammad was told by God in the Quran, you are not in control over them. Quran 88:22. Think about that. The Prophet, the leader of the Muslim community, was told he couldn't force people to believe. His job was to share the message, not control people's hearts. That's the example Islam gives. And if even the Prophet wasn't allowed to force belief, who can? This idea goes even deeper. Islam accepts that people will always be different. They'll come from different religions, backgrounds, and views. And it doesn't see this as a mistake, it sees it as part of God's plan. The Quran says, if your Lord had wanted, everyone on earth would have believed. So, will you try to force people to become believers? Quran 10:99? That question answers itself. The answer is no. But still, people read headlines or look at the actions of extremists and think that's what Islam teaches. The truth is, those headlines don't reflect the faith. They show what happens when people ignore the real teachings of their religion. There's another verse in the Quran, Quran 5:8, that says, do not let the hatred of others stop you from being fair. Be fair. That is closer to righteousness. This isn't just about rules. It's about how to treat people, even those who disagree with you, even those who reject your beliefs. Islam never says you can treat someone unfairly just because they don't believe as you do. It tells you to be just, even when it's tough. Let's be clear, Islam doesn't say all religions are equal or that they all lead to the same end. But it does say that belief has to be a choice, not something forced on someone. And it says that living beside people with different beliefs or no belief at all is a normal part of life. You can love your faith without hating others. You can disagree without being rude. You can share your beliefs without using force. And here's a fact: if your belief is so weak that it needs to be defended by fear or violence, it was never real belief to begin with. It was insecurity pretending to be faith. So when Islam says no compulsion in religion, it's not just stating a rule. It's laying the foundation for how people with different beliefs can live together. It's not about converting the whole world. It's about creating a world where belief is real, not because someone yelled it at you, but because you searched for it, thought about it, and chose it freely. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's what Islam stands for. There's something many people don't know. The Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam and the most important figure in Muslim history, didn't just accept Christians. He protected them. He honored them. He even wrote it down that they should be treated with respect and kindness. This wasn't some modern idea to make Islam look better. It's based on actual events. In the 7th century, during the Prophet's lifetime, there were Christian communities all over Arabia. One of the best-known events involved a group of Christians from a town called Najran, which is now in Saudi Arabia. These weren't just ordinary visitors, they were priests and leaders. They came to Medina to meet the Prophet and have real discussions about religion, about who Jesus was, what Christians believe, and how that compared with Islam. And here's the surprising part: when it was time for them to pray, the Prophet let them pray inside his mosque. That mosque was the holiest place for Muslims in the city. He didn't say, "This is only for Muslims." He welcomed them and respected their worship, even if he didn't agree with all of their beliefs. That's what real leadership looks like. That's compassion. And that's what Islam looks like when it's lived properly. But it didn't end there. After their meeting, the Prophet gave them an official document, a written agreement known as the Charter of Najran. This wasn't just a friendly note, it was a serious statement of rights and protection. In this charter, the Prophet promised that Christians would be protected their lives, their property, their churches. They had the freedom to practice their religion without interference. Muslims were even expected to help protect them, including with military support if needed. The charter also said that no church should be destroyed, no cross removed. It even said that if Christians needed help repairing their churches, Muslims should help them. That's not just being tolerant. That's taking responsibility. Imagine a leader today saying your place of worship is important to you, so it's important to us too. We'll protect it. We'll help take care of it. We'll make sure you feel safe there. That level of respect between faiths is rare, and yet it came from the Prophet of Islam over 1,400 years ago. Not from someone on the sidelines, but from the man Muslims follow. Now, some might say that was a long time ago, what about today? And yes, history has its dark parts. No group of people is perfect, but the problem isn't the Qur'an or the Prophet's example. It's when people stop following that example. If Muslims today truly followed the Prophet's teachings, no church would be burned, no Christians harmed in Islam's name. They would be seen as respected neighbors, not enemies. That's the pattern the Prophet gave us. He showed that belief and disagreement aren't excuses to mistreat others. People can believe differently and still protect each other. They can worship differently and still live peacefully. He didn't just say be kind, he made rules to make it happen. He didn't only talk about peace, he made it a part of the law. He didn't just accept Christians, he honored them as people with deep faith. This is a part of Islamic history that we need to speak about more. It's not about ignoring our differences, it's about leading with compassion. And if the Prophet could do that back then, there's no reason we can't do it today. If you really want to understand how Islam teaches Muslims to treat Christians, there's one major thing: you have to look at how the Quran tells Muslims to speak to them. Not fight them, not insult them. Talk to them with respect, calmness, and intelligence. That's not just a feel-good idea. It's a command from the Quran. In Surah Al-Ankabut, chapter 29, verse 46, it says, "Do not argue with the people of the book, except in the best way, unless they are acting unfairly. And say, we believe in what was revealed to us and what was revealed to you. Our God and your God is one, and we submit to him." Let's break that down. People of the book refers to Jews and Christians, those who received holy books before the Quran. And what does Islam say? Don't argue harshly. Don't fight to prove someone wrong. Use the best way. Talk with respect. Show kindness. That completely changes the way we think about conversations between different faiths. It's not about attacking someone else's beliefs. It's about using your best manners and your best thoughts. And it goes further. The verse says, "Our God and your God is one." That's not something you say if you want to create walls. That's something you say when you're trying to build a bridge. Most people don't know this, but the Quran actually says that Christians are among the closest in love to Muslims, Quran 582, because they're humble and kind. The Quran praises their dedication and their compassion. That doesn't mean Islam agrees with everything in Christianity, but it shows that Islam respects the way many Christians live out their faith with honesty and care. That's the example Muslims are supposed to follow. Notice what's good, respond with respect. Find what you have in common and build from that. Let's be honest, in today's world, religion often turns into arguments. People shout online, fight on TV, and try to prove everyone else wrong. It's tiring and it doesn't help, because no one changes their heart when they're being yelled at. But you know what can change hearts? Respect, curiosity, honest conversations. And that's what the Quran encourages. It's not asking Muslims to pretend all beliefs are the same. It's asking them to speak with character, to disagree without being cruel, to listen without judging, to show their faith in a way that invites real connection. This isn't some modern idea. It's been in Islam from the start. It's in the Quran. It's in the Prophet's actions. And if more people Muslim were not really understood this, we'd stop shouting and start listening. Because this isn't just about religion, it's about how we live, how we treat each other, how we build a world where being different doesn't mean being enemies. So next time someone tells you that Islam is about hate or division, remember this: the Quran actually teaches Muslims to speak to Christians in the best, kindest way. Not because we're exactly the same, but because we're all human, and that's where every real conversation should begin. Here's the truth, the one you don't often hear in headlines, at dinner tables, or in online comment sections. Islam does not teach Muslims to hate Christians. In fact, it teaches the opposite. It reminds Muslims of the shared roots between both faiths. It lifts up Jesus not quietly, but openly. It insists on freedom of belief, not forcing it. It shows the Prophet Muhammad himself standing up to protect Christians, and it commands Muslims to speak with kindness, not anger. The story we've been told, a story full of suspicion and conflict, starts to fall apart when you actually open the Qur'an, when you look at how the Prophet lived, when you talk to a Muslim who really follows the faith. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't need to mix beliefs or lose our identities. But we do need to show up with respect, not hatred, with clear minds, not closed hearts. Because the more you learn, the harder it is to hold on to hate. The problem isn't belief, it's ignorance, and ignorance is something we can fix. So if you take just one thing from all this, let it be this: you can't hate someone you truly understand. Islam doesn't see Christians as enemies. It sees them as fellow people on a journey. People of the book, human beings created by the same God. We can disagree and still respect each other. We can pray differently and still live in peace. That's not giving in, that's wisdom. That's strength.